Blaze's Bunker, Maev's Warden Cage, and the Mastery of Medivh. All these changes and more coming in this week's HGC North America. With a lot of action, a lot of changes, it's going to be cool to see what unfolds with this patch. I am Dreadnought. With me, as always, is Jayhow. And Jayhow, we're lucky enough to, see the European interpretation of the meta. Initial first thoughts.
I mean, just the fact of how far Maiev has fallen, I think was pretty standout through our games earlier today. Obviously, the Medivh prioritization is a little bit different in Europe than it is in North America from what we saw last week. I think we'll still see a lot of priorities on that. But again, I think the most telling thing is that Maiev.
Yeah, seeing where she's going to kind of unfold. But first, we need to look at where North America's standings have unfolded here. After the first week of part number 2, Tempo Storm still finds themselves at the very top of the ladder. Team 12 and Team Freedom, which we lucky enough will be able to see kind of play here today, quickly behind them. There hasn't been too many shifts, Jayhow, since part number 2 has come in yet so far. It's only one weekend of play, but the biggest thing it seems like all these teams have to be keeping in the back of our minds, us in the back of our minds, and you guys at home, is got to be the Crucible and having the playoff system going to a mid-season brawl, and we only have one auto-qualifying slot.
Yeah, obviously with Europe winning at the Clash, they have the extra spot, so things are a little bit different there. So in North America, it's a much more volatile environment that you have to win, and the higher seeding, which we've seen traditionally, has had a better experience at getting either to the midseason brawl or to BlizzCon. So I think the priority seeding is there, and then of course the Crucible spot, LFM, they've been unsuccessful in picking up some of those series victories, and I think that's really been hurtful for them. But then we start to look down the list, No Tomorrow, Simplicity, and even Gale Force maybe today if they start to lose games. Obviously a big matchup for them. So the bottom tier and then obviously the playoff seeding as well is a very big talking point as we get through these latter weeks.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point when talking about some of the matches up, specifically the second matchup that we're going to have today as we look at today's schedule. First off, we got to take a glance back at what happened within Europe, and that was Leftovers taking on Team Dignitas. Dignitas were doing what they do best, earning themselves a victory there. Liquid took on Tricked Esports. Liquid, looking of old form here. If you have not watched them recently, I definitely suggest you tune in. We end today with North America's No Tomorrow taking on Gale Force Esports. But first is LFM versus Team Freedom. The series that you were kind of talking about, though, has got to be that No Tomorrow and Gale Force Esports. When looking at Crucible range, that one, neither team is solidified 100%, but it absolutely is going to be helping their chances if they end up getting a win there.
Yeah, it's not just, for No Tomorrow in particular, it's not just about series victories, but if it comes down to it, they need game victories as well. That's kind of where they've been lacking. Despite the lack of success that LFM has had, they've picked up a lot of game victories. Same for Simplicity and teams like that. So No Tomorrow, they don't need to just pick up series victories, which obviously is a much better indicator. That kind of is like your first variable, but they need to start winning games, and I think for them, they've got to start rounding together.
Yeah, well, our first series, though, is going to be between LFM and Team Freedom. We are lucky enough to sit down with Dradit and Lutano and hear their thoughts about this match.
I think Team Freedom's biggest strength is still their small macro decisions that they make on the map, where they try to get very small advantages over you and just use that basically throughout the whole game. I think we can exploit that, though, by taking fights on our terms and just trying to get the fights that we want 5v5. I think they're definitely in a bit of a slump. They haven't seemed to have a ton of noticeable improvements in the past couple of weeks, whether that be due to maybe new drafts that they haven't really figured out yet, or just not improving their mistakes in general. So definitely looking to take Freedom while they're down.
We're always thinking, how do we make it to the next LAN? How do we be #1 in NA? And we've been trying to improve our team based on that. We've obviously been in a big slump right now. We got the 3-0 over No Tomorrow, but we got 3-0'd by TT, so that was pretty disappointing, and we're trying to continue working on improving that so that we can beat either TT or Tempo in playoffs. Honestly, I'm really impressed by them. They've improved so much since the Open Division, and they're just getting better and better. I can definitely see them making it out of Crucible this part, but I don't think they'll be beating us this weekend.
A lot of confidence coming out from Lutano there, and, you know, understandably so, considering Team Freedom's positioning at North America standings. But you have to remember that perspective of change and kind of thought process coming out from him. That is a player who had earned his slot the same way LFM did through kind of the you know, lack of qualification of a team, having the highest contending team come in at the HGC, and then making his way over to Team Freedom. Before that roster was not LFM, what am I thinking of here? Even in Death was the roster that was able to do that in 2017. And then, you know, just saying, you know, we got the confidence. We aren't worried about it. We're going to make it happen. They're impressive, but they aren't that impressive. Such a bold words there from Lutano.
The whole thing about LFM is their progress, and they're kind of in the weird limbo that we see Simplicity in, is that they're so close, yet so far when you look at their record. But I will say that this matchup is a big test for Freedom, and that's hard to say when you look at it standings-wise, because Team Freedom has struggled against aggressive teams and team-fighting teams. And if there's one thing that LFM does exceptionally well, is that team fighting, and they bring it. And that's something that, as we get further into this series, I want to continue to talk about, because that has been Team Freedom's kryptonite so far. And LFM might just have it. They already got the green color and everything.
They got everything going for them, you know, and the places that normally LFM does that is maps like Sky Temple and Infernal Shrines, but that's a battleground overlap with that of Team Freedom. So we'll see how this unfolds with the battleground selection as they come through. Team Freedom taking away Cursed Hollow, a norm from them. LFM banning out Infernal Shrines, a bit of a more bold move from them to take that away from Freedom. That shows, again, removing some of their confidence of themselves, going, hey, Team Freedom, they're extremely good at Infernal Shrines. We don't want to deal with that, and taking it off the board. But that's one of those moments when you have kind of this, you know, maybe a struggling team versus a Titan within North America. Whenever you have common battleground picks, are you willing to pick it? Because essentially you maybe are forfeiting over comfort to your opponent and, you know, those 3 heroes pre-secondary ban phase.
Well, I think the fact that they're willing to leave Sky Temple open, because if you're Team Freedom, your 2 battleground picks that you normally go with are Infernal Shrines, then Sky Temple. But Sky Temple, conversely, has been one of LFM's better battlegrounds.
So Battlefield of Eternity for Game 1, first pick, going over to Team Freedom because LFM was the map selector. A lot of questions when it comes to these drafts, as I was alluding to before, that this patch has changed quite a bit. And though we did get European interpretation towards it, even on the last patch, North America and Europe did not kind of land in total agreement on what is good and what is bad and kind of where that unfolds. One that stands out for me is not only going to be that Tracer, but also a Blaze. When and where does that come into the draft?
Yeah, with the Blaze changes, when you opened up, we talked about the bunker changes in particular, having that delay, that 1 second delay that you can get in and out of that, no longer making those sneaky plays. Then also it's going from 40 to 50 second cooldown, which it doesn't sound like much, but the impact is definitely felt. Even going last week, Dreadnought, we actually saw Blaze's win rate go down about 3 or 4 points off of where he was after week 5. And so obviously a lot more teams are playing him. His involvement rate is going up, but the success is kind of balancing out. I wonder if we might see a little bit more of a drop-off.
In all 6 games we got out of Team Freedom last week, Blaze was either banned in the first pick slot or 100% picked in the 1-2 of the second pick slot. That is why I'm raising this kind of question, is because he has seen huge amount of changes, and for especially these 2 teams, mainly that of Team Freedom, it has been high impact to their drafting priority and what they are looking to make happen. So I don't want to say it's a bold move into the high Tracer, a bit older of the meta. I'm surprised at, you know, a lack of support pick here for the side of LFM, going with the Garrosh and the Hanzo. Garrosh, man, he's been making his way towards the top of the standings when it comes to priority and involvement rate over the drafts in part number 2. Not surprising to see that as a response to the Tracer as well, giving over that synergy with the Malfurion. Malf did get nerfed technically, but I don't think it was enough to pull him away from, you know, kind of that high pick rotation, especially, you know, before the second ban phase.
Yeah. You know, I was looking at some stats. Collusion has done incredibly well on kind of off-meta heroes, like not necessarily the meta. Yeah. Karazim comes to mind, but Karazim doesn't really add up well here. Stukov has kind of been the new hotness, right? Stukov coming into week 5, it's a lot different, right? So Stukov before, through the first 5 weeks, Dreadnought, had 43 games played total through the first 5 weeks. After the clash, obviously Garrosh and Stukov were the hotness at both clashes.
Yeah.
In week 6 alone, Stukov was played 37 times, almost doubling his involvement rate in 1 week after 5 weeks. That is insane to think about. And the same thing can be said for Garrosh. He went from 43 games played as well up to 75. So both Garrosh and Stukov, we see the high priority here. You can thank the Clash for those two heroes.
You single-handedly, feels like you can. And thank the Clash for those. Maybe, you know, depending on the relevance of Tracer in the meta, you might be able to thank her as well for kind of having that brought to light at the Clash. Taking some time to figure out what the second ban is going to be on the side of LFM. We've seen them hovering the Malthael. They've been rotating out to things like the Garrosh, the Greymane, or not the Garrosh, the Greymane and the Maiev. We land on the Greymane, not wanting to deal with any kind of high V race potential. I'm really, you know, I'm going to be keeping my eye on this. The fact that we see this kind of priority with the Stukov over the opportunities of the Malfurion, especially with the Tracer material. Typically, we looked at that trio as really impactful before this patch. So, number one, does that force the ban onto the Malfurion? The fact that it hasn't been removed shows that I feel like that answer is no. And then second, it's going to be, what does that mean towards the overall support priority here for North America now on this patch? They do end up committing to the ban, but still, it raises a lot of questions now when it comes to, we've had pretty limited support viability. We now have very interesting support priority over that kind of limited pool.
Well, a hero you brought up last week was Uther. I think Uther does fit into the Awares pool, but especially with Malfurion being on and Stukov there, but it kind of depends on where they want to go. If it's Li Ming for T or if it's Tychus. Tychus can kind of self-survive post-level 10 and 13 because of the Odin providing that armor, and then 13 you've got Neosteel Coating, which you can activate to negate that pulse bomb damage. So if you feel safe, obviously you can go Uther. Uther can protect the Hanzo. Tychus can protect himself. Li Ming, obviously a little bit different story because you normally go Force Armor at level 1, but that requires you to hit skill shots to give you that Spell Armor, which also negates the Pulse Bomb. So that the pickup there, I think, will kind of determine where we see Aware go in terms of that support.
That's a really good point that you bring up there. One thing also I didn't consider so far with that rotation out of LFM, I was kind of questioning the lack of support priority, but also denying that armor shred and kind of fear onto Garrosh. You know, Artanis saw some changes, and I wrote down all the significant ones of like ones I want to remember at the top, you know, right out the gates. And I was like, you know, Artanis, I don't feel like these changes are going to be something that I need to write down. And it turns out that answer is not true. He gets picked in game 1 over the patch here.
This is probably the only battleground we know. Like, I remember last year a Casanova game on Tomb of the Spider Queen. Obviously, that's, you know, few and far between. But Battlefield of Eternity, the reason you see Artanis on this battleground more often than not is the amateur opponent, which applies to monsters, which is mercenaries, minions, and monsters. Monsters, of course, being the Immortals on this one. So he does have good race using his abilities there. So very rare do we see that.
Typically paired with a heavy kill potential in the 4 to just get that 1-4 split we were talking about. Not provided too much with the Hanzo, Tassadar, and Garrosh. Then the last pick, knowing that it's got to be a full-on support, it's unlikely that it's going to increase the kill potential. A lot of sustain, a lot of poke on the composition for LFM. And this is the rare, you know, who I thought was dead, Arthas, picked up for Team Freedom, backing that up with a Jaina. A lot of chase potential, and there's that Ariel. Man, these drafts got...
let's talk about this, Dredd.
I mean,
do you remember what I told you on the ride in this morning about Ariel and Aware?
It's the old guy. I mean, it's pretty much what we knew from him in the Open Division was, I don't want to call it a one-trick Ariel, but at least interpretation-wise, a lot of teams felt like it might be that case for Aware. And not one Ariel change, there was multiple Ariel changes, but one buff into the Ariel department, and it's enough to commit to that strategy here for LFM.
It's weird because if you're not aware of the Aware, who is the support for LFM, it was such a vaunted hero for this guy that it was banned out. Not second ban, but in Open Division in the playoffs, it was first ban. That's how strong he was. A lot of people thought he couldn't do well on other heroes. He's proven a lot of people wrong here, but going back, and again, I think the buffs definitely help. And you look at this setup now. Tassadar can survive on that backside. He can shield over. Maybe we'll get a redemption build. Probably not, because it'll probably be the W build. The Scatter Arrow build from Hanzo. But then now he has the phase shift in case he gets in trouble. The Ariel has the Crystal Aegis she can put down to make sure and protect anybody from the Pulse Bomb.
Are you trying to say we aren't going to get a Resurrect this game? Because, I mean, hello? Resurrect changes came in, ladies and gentlemen. 7 range? 7 range!
Of course, that is astronomical number that makes you want to pick it, right?
We'll find out here. Game number 1, ladies and gentlemen, going to take place on Battlefield of Eternity. In blue is LFM, where we have Aware on his legendary Ariel. Swabs is on the Artanis. We got Draded repping it on Garrosh. Figgy in the front line is going to be on Tassadar, and T on Hanzo. You know, Figgy in the front line sounds like good, but he's really not going to be in the front line. That makes me sad.
We'll see. On the right side is going to be Team Freedom, as we've got Yoda. He's going to be on Jaina, Zugrug on Arthas, Nasmus on Tyrael, Collusion on Stukov, and Lutano on the Tracer. There's so much I want to talk about with this.
Like, where do you want to start unpacking this beautiful, beautiful
Arthas,
package?
first off.
Okay, let's start
So the Arthas was a counter towards Artanis. Artanis, when he gets auto attacks, it resets his trait. It lowers his trait cooldown, which gives him shields below 75%. So getting that cooldown reduction there, but also he has block. We see Redemption was picked up by Hanzo. He might still go to the scatter arrow build, but you can see Arthas was picked up, and I think that's strictly for the Artanis.
It also synergizes extremely well with that Tyrael, something that I was talking about all of last weekend when looking at North America with the priority into the Tyrael. It did seem like there were a couple moments with, I mainly was suggesting it with Tyrael with response to the Warden's Cage. Not going to be the selection here, but I do feel like he's, you know, kind of one of those underestimated warriors whenever paired in that double warrior composition, and you aren't too worried about the lanes. Conveniently, Battlefield of Eternity kind of plays into that playstyle quite a bit. Is there anything else when looking at the compositions? I feel like the, you know, all in the Hanzo department for LFM, running that kind of old school double support with the hyper carry is going to be a little bit kind of difficult, mainly when looking at that Artanis, is not because of the race potential or the impact that Artanis has on this map specifically, but just he's going to be in one area out there looking for a major play, looking for something to happen. The Artanis diving the backline, maybe even looking for those swaps, but then, you know, the trifecta, the Hanzo, the Ariel, the Tassadar are going to be in a different area. Normally, that kind of, you know, break in thought process to be effective as a hero is enough to deter this playstyle. So Swabs got a lot on his shoulders this game with that Artanis.
See Nasmus being aggressive. That's kind of the other thing here. Zugrug has played 10 games on Tyrael, one of our highest played Tyrael players here in North America. And now the fact that Zugrug has moved over to that Arthas, obviously it could just be a situational matchup because the Arthas is Arthas, it's weird because he's kind of been in that secondary melee role, that kind of bruiser style role. Instead, we see the switch up altogether here, but we also do see Tyrael in that solo lane, so obviously that's normally Nasmus's role. So a little bit of a change up there.
The biggest reason why Arthas, compared to those other, you know, offlaners, doesn't kind of fulfill that role that well is within the 4-man, he does do pretty good within kill potential, but he doesn't kind of have that upfront, you know, threat that many of the warriors in the current meta do. He doesn't have the gap closer to escape to those frontline threatening warriors. And then on the side lane, he's kind of like Tyrael in the sense that he's really good and he just doesn't die. He typically can hold his own, but he doesn't win majority of those matchups either. He's kind of a placeholder laner, and so it makes him a bit awkward here and there. And that's generally, again, why I was saying anytime we can get him on those maps where the laning isn't as relevant, like Battlefield of Eternity, you're normally going to see him come to light here. 4 seconds out from what is going to be the first Immortal phase of this game. His posturing is going to be defensive with both of their, you know, the camps picked up for LFM on bottom, stacking those together. Jaina's going to be looking to rid of those. And they take this downtime to use Swabs and that amateur opponent. Show how much race potential they have here between the two.
That's ripping through it, and we still are going to have to see a lot more. T under assault there. Lutano misses the pulse bomb on the back line, and that is a big miss. I think he should have been able to survive regardless. Remember, this is before the Tracer changes, so still a little bit stronger in the early game, not quite to that patch yet.
That pulse bomb, though, and not connecting there for Lutano. Not only is he the, you know, primary damage dealer other than the Jaina on their side and their composition, but it's just that was onto a Hanzo who doesn't have that big a gap closer. Collusion under a lot of pressure here for a moment, able to kite back. Draded trying to, you know, find a position there to get a good flip. Groundbreaker onto 3. The aggression here from Team Freedom is they're just body blocking Swabs, able to find the first blood after that lurking arm from Collusion.
Well, this is a position where we see teams that, despite being down a man, you still have Hanzo that can use some of that geometry, and we've got Draded flipping Zugrug to the backside, eating that scatter arrow. Collusion trying to get a little bit of zoning as the lurking arm goes down, but this is still an area where T can work. A little bit off the mark with that one, but definitely can get right back into this race. Artanis, he's back up. We'll see if Team Freedom can maybe race here.
Artanis is going to make it back and make that thing look fast on that race. I don't think there's any chance Team Freedom can end up winning this. Do end up getting a lot of damage output, though, setting it to what, 5–10% HP on that shielding?
This is something that we've seen teams when the shield is this low, especially because of the damage that LFM was able to accomplish in that bottom lane. It's sometimes that I'd like to see teams, if they can get a little bit of damage in and then force the rotation down. I mean, generally you're going to get a wall out of this at the most, but maybe go down, rotate to the bottom, open up that lane a little bit more with that low of a shield, and you can see the Immortal already moving in to melee range right after he gets that in, and it's cleared up much, much quicker.
Collusion there with the lurking arm to make, kind of that less effective of a siege opportunity for LFM. Front wall gonna drop. Draded finds himself in Arthas. Zugrug now just looking to body block, say thanks for the positional advantage, even getting the Frozen Tempest continuing there. Where though, landing the heal. Draded gonna go for another Groundbreaker. Zugrug with the Howling Blast. No, just a lot of attemptive initiations there. Nice attainment strike onto Lutano, almost catching out enough for Draded to get a flip over.
What's interesting is he's actually caught Lutano a couple times against structures so far, and again, that's why he's, I dare use the word feared, but well respected on the Ariel as the Aware continuing to make things happen. Lutano, you can see pressuring the backline, but Zugrug and team with the invade. Collusion just going to hang out in the bush with that lurking arm dread.
Draded gonna flip him off. Two-man knock-up. It's enough to get the camp. Now the collapse from Swabs. Will he go for the flip? He will. Pulling Collusion back thanks to the Howling Blast. Groundbreaker and toss over. Not enough to give anybody or any leeway or working room here for LFM. They have to back out. Good aggression there for a moment for them, even earning the camp. I like the fact that we see LFM, finding ways within the Immortals, more than just the Immortals, to try and, gain an upper hand over Team Freedom.
No upper hand just yet, Dread. Both teams pretty even. A little bit of structure damage in the top lane, but Team Freedom did quite a bit in the early laning phase to give themselves that entire wall down. We got about 20 seconds left. You'll see LFM drop back. They'll pick up their Shaman camp, and speaking of Shaman camps, this camp spawning right on cue here for Team Freedom, but Team Freedom has a slight lead in terms of experience. That's why you see on the minimap, Garrosh already rotating up, doesn't want to miss out on any more minions, as they need to make sure every minion counts at this point in the race to 10.
LFM should have better opportunities of getting kind of side soak and clear around this, which is why you see T kind of using that wave clear right now with stacking the camps once more on the bottom half like we saw from them during the first Immortal phase. It's not going to cost them anything here, as Team Freedom with the defensive positioning was unable to capitalize on that small window of opportunity. Making the rotation down though, trying to catch Figgy very early, dimensional shift might cost him there. The pulse bomb goes down. Damage is there. Lutano tracking it down on that Tracer. Second kill for Freedom.
A kill gives them a tad bit of experience and gives them level 10, so they're likely to come in and be aggressive here. Despite this being in a defensive position, that little bit of time that they're going to get might net them 50%. They don't have incredible race, but they're definitely going to make the most out of this opportunity.
How much can we see LFM get done here once they end up hitting the 10 spike? We see Swabs up in the top lane, showing no intent here to team fight anytime soon. 10's picked up, make the rotation down. Aegis is still going to be the selection here for Aware.
I know you're disappointed.
It's one of those things that is like, I hate to see it, but I love to see it at the same time.
I do dig the Purifier Beam, because if Stukov wants to sit on that backside, he can just instantly get that. And if you can get any type of slow, any type of flip onto that, then it's just going to amplify the effects. So we'll see Purifier Beam, see if it gets any zoning progress out here as Nasmus and team push forward and deter a little bit of the aggression by LFM. It just feels like a team fight's about to break out. Nasmus, he's under assault.
Not going to pull the trigger there onto the taunt. Good move, Indomitable. The taunt goes down to the lurking arm, constantly silencing Swabs. He's going to go ahead and dash, pull Collusion back in, but Sanctification there for Team Freedom, and they end up getting the first kill of this fight. Aegis stalling the inevitable there for Aware. 2 for nothing here for Team Freedom. Brilliant Sanctification, great initiation from them. LFM, you saw them kind of poking and prodding, looking for the, most efficient posturing for them, but Freedom just not let them have it, J-How.
It looked like LFM might have missed the mark on that Crystal Aegis, but I think it was all for naught. And, all of a sudden, I see Ring of Frost, and I'm like, all right, sometimes we see that. And then I'm starting to think about, remember Ragnaros when Ariel was still meta?
Yep.
And then every time you're like, oh, Crystal Aegis, this is a free Sulfurous Smash. Now you're going to get a free Ring of Frost, because it followed up directly on that. You don't have a cleanse. Your backup option, you better hope that somebody survives on that front line. So we could potentially see that. Every time we see Aegis out, you might see the Ring of Frost in return. Obviously, the cooldowns are a little bit shorter, but by the time team fights break out, that could very much be a thing.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest downsides to Ariel as a hero, flat out, is that her only quote-unquote burst heal, if you will, to keep that target alive. It essentially is her cleanse, it is her burst heal, it is everything towards her kit. And because it does provide that predictability, if you aren't the ones winning that fight, or at least that Aegis is not a prime target, nice flank here from Lutano. Not going to cost them too much yet. Zugrug moving up for the Howling Blast as the Pulse Bomb lands onto T. Just going to, get that damage out, though. Not going to gain too much. LFM will end up making it back.
The whole time, Artanis has been pushing up at the top. Arthas is forced to respond to that, but the rest of the crew here, as Team Freedom pushes in, you can see Collusion nice and safe with that extra range. He's just zoning everybody out. Once the wall goes down, there's really not a whole lot more that can be done. Swab's trying to get a little bit of experience, but he's going to have... Well, that's a nice swap. That buys him a little bit of time to get out of here, because Zugrug could have essentially slowed him enough. He gets the dismount with the death coil.
From the side wall. He dodges. No, not able to dodge the Howling Blast. But look at that. Dragon's Arrow after the dash ends up getting a lot of damage. Drayden coming in there with the taunt. Purifying Beam goes down. Gets the kill onto Yoda. Sanctification is there, but there's the Aegis now from Aware, able to keep up Garrosh a little bit longer, but not long enough. Great fighting opportunity there from LFM over what looked like a terrible situation. Ends up costing them a little bit more, but that, for sure looked like it was just going to be one kill. There's your dead Artanis, and we're out.
The taunt into Purifier Beam.
That is
new meta.
Interesting synergy that I have not seen. Just trying to lock it down, the single target. Jaina was just sitting there going like, I'm trying to run away from this scary death alien beam, but, the Garrosh not letting me have it.
Trixler used to play a lot of Artanis. I don't think he does as much anymore, but all of a sudden I guarantee he's going to queue up this week, and he's going to be like, hey, can somebody pick Garrosh? Because I'd really like to pick Artanis here. I see it coming. I see it coming.
Having all those H82 kind of throwbacks out from the original Eastern Clash there with Trick. LFM will end up rounding the 13s, though, before we end up hitting this next Immortal phase. Only down one structure difference here from that in Team Freedom, but this really is going to be the Immortal fight that kind of decides a lot. If LFM ends up struggling over this, they're going to be losing a bit more, as that 16 talent tier is going to be closed in by Team Freedom. It really is putting a lot of pressure on their shoulders, and they need to find a way to make that happen. It's going to come down to swaps. I'm saying it here. Some kind of big swap onto the proper target, just some way to make this Artanis pick worth more than just an amateur opponent race.
Since we have a brief moment here, this is something I don't normally see, but at level 13, normally we see kind of that triple strike on his W. You normally see that, but at this one, he's actually going phase bulwark, which gives you 50 spell armor whenever you have that shield, which is frequent. And that is strictly because of the burst damage and the lockdown potentially of the Stukov arm into the Jaina burst. Swab's going for more survivability here. I don't blame him.
Yeah, it's going to make him very, very difficult to kill. There goes Dragon's Arrow, lands on a Lutano, forces out the recall. Not enough to get a kill, though. He's going to be fine for now. Zugrug moving up with that Frozen Tempest. Getting the slow. Nice knockback. Swabs ends up getting the swap. Now massive shoved all the way back onto Team Freedom's side.
Ooh, Lutano's going hunting. He is going hunting now. He is on Swab. Swabs turns around, gets the auto attack in, see if he has a Q available. You need to hit heroes on that.
Aegis, heal. There goes the Ring of Frost, able to lock two down. It's going to be 2 kills now for Team Freedom. Sanctification, just kind of the cherry on top there. One of those, if somehow this doesn't work out for us, it will 5 seconds later. Nasmus now getting the Aldruins. Nice knockback from the Tainment Strike of Aware.
The scary part now for LFM is that Team Freedom's about to have 16. They can get any bit of side soak, that bottom lane mounting up. So in this halftime phase, look for Team Freedom to potentially peel off, get 16, and then there's so much threat with that talent tier advantage as well as the multiple level advantage. But this is a minor opportunity. Actually, with the placement of these, I don't think they can back off because T on Hanzo can do so much damage in such little time.
Not wanting to deal with that poke for the race, as you see Lutano and Yoda doing their best back there. When it's all said and done, Team Freedom is going to claim themselves about 60, 75% almost. Swap attempt here from Swabs, a panic attempt to get a fight, but 16 is still here. Dragon's Arrow was sent out. Taunt landing onto all 4 members of Team Freedom, but they are not afraid of anything. Great lurking arm there from Collusion is going to kind of dissuade any more advanced swabs. Finds himself in the back line of Team Freedom. Not the area he's going to want to be. Now 2 levels down. Again, that Immortal still spawning and that 16 talent here. This is inevitably a keep. Question is how much past that. Is it enough to get game here for Freedom?
Scary prospect for LFM as they're trying to fall back. A very unique draft, to say the least, as they are busting out the new, minor tweaked Ariel as well as the Artanis. And so far hasn't worked out. 2 levels down. The Immortal through the keep, and Nasmus just sitting on that front line. Massive shove is going to push Garrosh back, and he's their best initiator.
Nasmus took a bit more damage there than he would have liked in the siege, but it's not going to cost him anything here. They have Sanctification available if needed. Zugrug and friends with this Immortal, what are they going to make the move? Kind of dancing back and forth. Do we want a core? The answer seems to be no. Make this rotation down to the bottom keep. Claim the second one for themselves. Heck, you know what? This wall was in my way. I'll take this out in the way too.
I'm not going to lie. This is the part of Freedom sometimes where obviously it's an early Immortal, but just feigning, looking for that 1 kill is sometimes enough to kind of put you over the edge and get the core. And this is where Team Freedom, their macro is great, but sometimes pulling the trigger in team fights is not their forte. Obviously, they don't have the hard initiation, but with the Arthas Tyrael on that front line, you have more than enough peel if you need to get out of there. And so I'm a bit surprised that they either didn't hard rotate to the bottom keep maybe a little bit sooner, because you can leave some of that health on the Immortal, hard rotate bottom, threaten that keep, but they stopped at the mid wall, they left a little bit late, and it felt like a missed opportunity they could have gotten more out of.
Absolutely. There was definitely, at least, 10 seconds, I feel like, probably lost in rotation in one way or another, where Freedom maybe not getting as much as they can out of circumstances, but it's one of those, it feels like Freedom is very much wow, flip over onto Zugrug, knock up there, gonna drop Army of the Undead, trying to keep himself alive, gonna get a 2-man Howling Blast too, but look at that silence. Lutano goes in with the Pulse Bomb, able to get the kill there, very well done. Freedom, even under not optimal initiations, able to turn things around.
Sanctification goes down as swabs will follow, and now this keep is definitely easy. And the initiation there was on the side of LFM because Draded just simply tossed over that of Zugrug, and he said thank you very much, as now the shields go down and so is the core health.
Yeah, the core HP dropping very fast, and I feel like, kind of if anything brought to light maybe why, when we sit there and go, this is Team Freedom not getting as much out of the situation as they would have liked. The same talent tier advantage. Imagine that initiation. Arthas is on the other side of the wall. He gets chunked down to 30, 40% HP for free nearly in that initiation. And the reason you need to highlight that is look how convincing that team fight still was in Team Freedom's favor. A lot of that comes down to the talent tier, the compositions, things of the like, and maybe too much use on the Arthas, but it just shows that it's like when you have that big of an advantage, you got to be getting something somewhere, right? And really, during that downtime, all they got was a mid-gate, debatably a well for a tap, and it's like how much pressure could have been done to that bottom keep? The answer is probably a lot, or in fact, maybe the game. Very clean play there from Freedom. Beyond that, what I was trying to say is it feels like they have that what is the fight that we can lose this that we can still lose this game, right? That any time that the answer is yes to this, they almost always will take the passive route. They'll take the slower route and like kind of hold it out, play the slower game. And I personally feel like it's to a point that it seems like it's going to end up costing them a little bit more than, it should in these type of situations. Not so much that last game, but something to keep your eyes on whenever watching Team Freedom perform here.